So I've been stitching away. I've only been stitching the kinds of stitches that we've already gone over. So stem stitch and French knots and some of those. But I wanted to get on the ball and get some of this going. So the next thing I want to show you is we're going to do the center block, which spells out love. So I'm doing all the letters, the outlines, in a stem stitch. The little heart is those two fly stitches that I showed you in this block up here. And then this one on the V, those are two stem stitches really close to each other. Now I'm going to go back I'm using another color here. I'm going to do the inside of these wide spots in the letters with a chain stitch. You notice I didn't trace it because I know it's going to go right up the middle. I know what it is because I can look at the stitch guide, so I don't need to actually do that. I also wanted to point out, since this arrow's going over the letter and then under the fabric and over the letter, you want to make sure you stitch the letter first before you stitch your arrow. Okay, so to do a chain stitch, you're going to start at the bottom in the center. A chain stitch is just a bunch of lazy daisies all connected. So what you're going to do is put your needle back down in the center, right where you came up, just like you would in a lazy daisy, and take a small stitch with a thread under the needle. And don't pull it too tight because you want to keep that nice little loop. Now instead of tacking it down, we're going to go back in that hole on the inside of the loop and come up a little farther to make the next chain. Again, the thread's going to go behind the needle, and we'll pull that through. And you just continue that all the way up. Like that. And if you notice on the O, what I did is I started at the top center, worked my way down to the bottom, and then started, I think I went all the way around. But down here at the bottom, I kind of started over again, so it wouldn't be a big, thick lump right in the middle. So there we go. Okay, so I'll continue this, and then I'll show you some other parts of this center block. Okay, so now that I'm at the end, I'm going to tack it on the other side of the loop just like you would a lazy daisy, and that will hold it in place. All right, we've got one down. So I went ahead and stitched out the rest of love, and I added the arrow just like we did in this square up here. So the little satin stitch for the point of the arrow. So now I'm going to do this blanket stitch, and you can see I've started it here. So it's kind of just like a long line with a bunch of little teeth. So the best place to start a blanket stitch is in the corner. So I'm going to start it here, and you'll bring your needle up right in the corner. And take that first tooth and come back up in the same spot you started. Now we're ready to take the first stitch. You're going to carry the thread on the inside. You're going to go to the next tooth and then back to that line, the drawn line, and you're going to carry your thread under your needle, and you'll want to pull it down, not this way, it will kind of fold in on itself. So you want to pull it down, and now you have your first little blanket stitch, and then you just continue on. So the outside of the tooth, back to that drawn line, the thread under the needle, and just like that. And don't worry about them being perfect. Mine never are. Some of them are a little longer than others, and some of them are a little closer together than others, but I like the fact that it shows that it's been done by hand and not perfect. I do admire people who can do it perfectly, but that's never been my goal. Okay, so we're getting close to this corner, and I'll show you how to turn the corner. Back to that line. Couple more. Okay, that's the last one. So now I'm in the corner, and all I'm going to do is turn my fabric and continue just like I started. So I'm going to go to the end of that tooth, back up through that where I turn the corner. I'm going to catch the little thread. There we go. So there's the first tooth. Now move on to the second tooth. And we'll just continue that all the way around. So the next stitch I want to show you is the running stitch. And anywhere on the pattern where you see dashed lines, those are running stitches. It's basically like a quilting stitch. You just go up, down, up, down. So you're going to start at one end or the other. I'm left-handed, so I always go left to right. And you can take as big or as small stitches as you want. I got my thread all messed up here. Here we go. I like to take, it's still not right, just a second. There we go. I like to take, it's a little bigger than 1/8 of an inch. And I try to keep them even so that I take as much fabric as not, so the stitches and the spaces end up being about the same. I didn't get my thread even there. There we go. Okay, I think I've got it fixed now. Okay, so I'm just going to take one more. So that was really difficult. If you mastered that, you should feel very proud of yourself. So there is the running stitch. So the last thing we have to do on this center block are these little hearts in the corners, and those are satin stitch. So I've done a few of them, so you can see what they look like. And I just have this little guy here left to go. So I'm going to turn my fabric. And what I have found for these heart shapes is to start in the center and work my way out. So I'm going to start at the very bottom point of the heart, pull my needle up there, and then I'm going to go down right at the top of the V. And then all I need to do is just stay on that line and keep my needle right next to the thread of the last stitch. We want to keep them really close together. Now, if I was using a solid color fabric, I might color that heart in. So if I was using red thread, I would color it in with a red marker. And that way, if my stitches weren't touching each other, I wouldn't see the light of the fabric underneath. So I'm going to come up and I'm just going to continue on the outside line. I'm having a dickens of a time with my thread for some reason. It's me, not the thread. The thread's wonderful. It's gorgeous. So one thing to keep in mind, though, is if you're using a variegated thread like this, since you're starting in the center, if you happen to get to a point where, you know, there's a huge change in color, then one half of your heart might be a different color than the other. But I think we're going to be okay with this piece of thread. But that is something you can consider before you start stitching. I think this one just now is going to start getting a little bit lighter. And so we just work our way out. I did one side, now I'm doing the other. And these hearts are kind of wonky, so they're not perfectly heart-shaped. And I'll do one more little stitch there. There, now that one's done. I like the ones that show a little variegation. So now there's a few more stitches to go, and I'll go over those next time. I'll do the outside border and these little stitches in there. There's just a few other ones, and then we'll be all done. So I hope you're having fun stitching this set. Thank you so much for watching this tutorial. If you enjoyed it or learned something from it, I hope you will click like, and I would love it if you'd also follow me so you don't miss any new tutorials. Thank you.